I spent 15 years being the person everyone called when things fell apart. 15 years of picking up the phone at midnight. Wiring money I didn't have. Showing up when no one else would. And for 15 years, I did all of it quietly. Without complaint. Because that's what you do for family. My name is Clara. I'm a registered nurse. 31 years old. And for the better part of a decade, I worked double shifts at a hospital in Columbus, Ohio. Living in a studio apartment so small that my kitchen and my bedroom were essentially the same room. I drove a car with 200,000 miles on it. I bought store-brand everything. I packed lunch every single day. I said no to vacations. No to concerts. No to every little luxury that my coworkers took for granted. Because I had a number in my head and I was not going to stop until I hit it. $240,000. That was my down payment goal. Not a starter amount. Not enough to get in the door. I wanted to walk into a purchase with real leverage. Real equity. A mortgage payment I could handle even if I got sick. Even if my hours got cut. Even if anything went wrong. I'd watched my mother lose our childhood home when I was 12 because the margin was too thin and one bad month was all it took. I swore I would never feel that way. I would never stand in a driveway watching strangers carry my things to the curb. So I worked. And I saved. And I told absolutely no one what I was doing. Not my mother. Not my best friend from nursing school. And especially not my older brother Marcus and his wife Renee. If you've never had a Marcus in your life, let me describe him to you. He is the kind of person who has a reason for everything and a solution for nothing. Every conversation eventually circles back to how hard things are for him. How unfair the world has been. How close he is to a breakthrough that never quite arrives. Marcus is charming and funny and genuinely lovable in the way that people are lovable when they are not your financial responsibility. His wife Renee is sharper, quieter, and considerably more calculating. Where Marcus stumbles into situations, Renee architects them. They have 3 kids. They rent a house in Dayton that costs more than they should be spending. Marcus works in sales and has for years operated on the assumption that his next commission check will solve everything. It never does. Renee does bookkeeping part-time and spends the rest of her time managing a version of their life on social media that looks nothing like the version they actually live. Over the years, I had given them money more times than I could count. Not loans. I stopped calling them loans after the second time. Because a loan implies a return. And what I was really doing was making a donation to the ongoing project of Marcus and Renee's comfort. $3,000 when their car got repossessed. $1,500 when Renee's mother got sick and they needed to fly out. Smaller amounts so many times I stopped tracking them. I told myself it was fine. I told myself family takes care of family. What I didn't understand then, and what I understand completely now, is that there is a version of taking care of family that is healthy and loving and mutual. And then there is the version where you become an ATM that certain people have memorized the PIN to, and they stop seeing you as a person and start seeing you as a resource. I was deep in the second version and I didn't even know it. I found the house on a Tuesday morning in October. Between the end of a night shift and the beginning of sleep, I desperately needed. I was scrolling out of habit. The way you do when your brain is too tired to stop but too wired to rest. And there it was. A 3-bedroom craftsman in a quiet neighborhood in Westerville. Original hardwood floors. A porch that wrapped around the front. A backyard big enough to matter. Priced just under $400,000. Which with my down payment would leave me with a mortgage I could handle on a single nursing salary with room to spare. I sat in my car in the hospital parking garage and looked at those photos for 45 minutes. I called my realtor that afternoon. I made an offer that weekend. By the following Thursday, the offer was accepted. I told no one. I know that sounds extreme. I know most people. When something wonderful happens, I want to share it immediately. But I had learned something important about myself and about my family over the years. Which is that good news? In the wrong hands. Becomes a negotiation. I had watched it happen before. When I got my first nursing job, Marcus had called within a week to ask if I could help them out now that I was making real money. When I paid off my car, Renee had suggested, very casually, that, since I no longer had a car payment, I could probably help them catch up on theirs. I was not going to let that happen with this house, so I moved through the entire process in silence. The inspection, the appraisal, the final walkthrough, the closing, all of it quiet, all of it mine. The day I got the keys, I sat on the bare floor of the empty living room for a long time. I didn't cry. I just sat there and felt something I had not felt in a very long time, which was that I had done something entirely for myself, by myself. And no one could take any credit for it, and no one could ask anything of it. I spent the first 2 weeks moving in slowly, buying furniture piece by piece, painting the bedroom a color I had picked out years ago and saved to a folder on my phone like a secret. I didn't post anything on social media. I had my mail forwarded. I told my mother I had moved to a new apartment and left it at that. She didn't push. My mother has learned over the years that I share things when I'm ready and not before. My brother, I did not tell at all. I had my reasons. Actually, I had one very specific reason. And her name was Renee. About a month after I moved in, I was at my mother's house for Sunday dinner, a monthly tradition that I maintained carefully because my mother is the one member of my family I would do anything for, and Renee was there with Marcus and the kids. It was a normal evening until it wasn't. I had stepped out to take a work call. And when I came back in, I saw Renee in the hallway near my coat. And there was something about the way she moved away from it that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I checked my bag that night before I left. Everything seemed to be there. But my keys were in a slightly different position than I remembered leaving them. And one of the small carabiners I used to keep my house keys separate from my car keys had been unclipped and reclipped in a way that wasn't how I did it. I told myself I was being paranoid. I changed my locks the next morning anyway. I want to be very clear about this. Because it matters, I did not wait. I did not talk myself out of it. I thought about what I had seen. I thought about who Renee was and what she had done before. And I drove to the hardware store before my afternoon shift, and I had a locksmith come that evening. New deadbolt. New handle lock. New strike plates on every exterior door. I also, that same week, had a security system installed. Not just cameras, a full system with door and window sensors, motion detection, and an alarm loud enough to be heard from the street. I set it to call the police automatically on any unauthorized entry. The locksmith asked me if everything was okay. I told him I was a single woman living alone, and I liked to be thorough. He nodded and didn't ask anything else. 2 weeks passed. Nothing happened. I started to feel like maybe I had overreacted. And then I reminded myself that overreacting on a security issue costs you an afternoon and a few $100s. And underreacting can cost you everything. Then I got the text from my neighbor Janet. Janet is in her 60s. Retired. And has appointed herself the unofficial watch captain of our block in the way that certain wonderful older women do. We had exchanged numbers shortly after I moved in when she brought over a plate of cookies and stayed for an hour of conversation that I genuinely enjoyed. She was sharp, observant, and had strong opinions about property values, and weak opinions about people who didn't maintain their lawns. I liked her immediately. Her text came on a Wednesday evening when I was just finishing a shift. It said, "Clara, there are people at your house. A man and a woman and what looks like 3 kids. They've been trying to get in the front door for the last 10 minutes. I didn't recognize them. I'm watching from my window. Should I call anyone?" I read that text standing in the hospital corridor and felt something cold move through my chest. I pulled up my security app right there in the hallway. The front porch camera showed Marcus and Renee on my porch. Renee had what looked like a key in her hand. She was trying it in the deadbolt, then in the handle, then Going back to the deadbolt. The 3 kids were sitting on the porch steps looking at their phones. A minivan I didn't recognize was parked in my driveway. I watched Renee try the key 4 more times. I watched Marcus try it once. I watched Renee walk around to the side of the house and try the side door. Then I watched the security system light up as she triggered a door sensor. The alarm didn't go off, she hadn't opened anything, but the sensor registered and I got a notification. I watched on camera as both of them stepped back from the house. I could see Renee talking, though obviously I couldn't hear her. Marcus had his hands in his pockets, looking at the ground in the way he always does when something isn't going the way he expected. I texted Janet back, "I know who they are. Please don't call anyone yet. I'm on my way. I want to tell you that I was calm on that drive home. I wasn't. I was shaking. Not from fear, but from a kind of focused anger that I have only felt a few times in my life. The kind that doesn't make you irrational but makes you extraordinarily clear. I knew exactly what had happened. Renee had gotten a copy of my key made or tried to. I would later find out that she had in fact made a copy from the original before I changed the locks. Which is why it didn't work. She had brought my brother and their kids to my house with the plan of walking in. And whatever was going to happen after that, I could only speculate about. But I had a good idea. I had heard Marcus on the phone with our mother about 6 weeks earlier, before I'd changed my number with her. He'd been talking about space and the kids needing their own rooms and how it wasn't fair that some people had more than they needed. He hadn't mentioned me by name, but I knew exactly what the conversation was about. Because Renee doesn't let conversations like that happen by accident, I pulled up to my house and parked behind their minivan so they couldn't leave easily without talking to me. Renee saw me first. Her expression went through about 4 different versions of itself in under 2 seconds. Surprise. Calculation. Something that tried to arrange itself into innocence. And then something harder when it realized innocence wasn't going to work. Marcus turned around and had the decency to look genuinely ashamed. I got out of my car. I did not raise my voice. I had decided on the drive over that I was not going to give either of them the satisfaction of seeing me upset. Because I was not the one who should be upset. I said, "What are you doing at my house?" Renee started talking immediately. Which is what Renee does. She said they were in the area. They wanted to surprise me. They'd been worried about me being out here alone. They just wanted to see the place. She said all of this in one continuous stream without taking a breath. The way someone talks when they've rehearsed something and are hoping momentum will carry them past scrutiny. I let her finish. Then I said, "How did you know my address?" Pause. Marcus said he had mentioned to their mother that I'd bought a house and she had looked up the county property records. That part, at least, I believe was true. Property records are public. I had known that was a possibility and accepted it. What I had not accepted was what came next. I said. And the key, Renee said she didn't know what I was talking about. I held up my phone. I showed her the camera footage of her standing at my front door with a key, trying the lock 6 times. She said she had found a key in her purse that she thought might be mine from when I'd stayed with them once. Years ago. And she'd just been checking. I want you to understand something about that explanation. I have never stayed with Marcus and Renee. Not once. I have visited their house, and I have never spent the night. There was no key of mine in her purse. What there was, I was a copy made from the key she'd taken off my ring at my mother's house a month earlier. Before I changed the locks. I said I changed my locks 4 weeks ago. She didn't say anything. I said I also have a security system that logs every attempted entry and automatically contacts the police if anyone gets inside without the code. Which means that if you had gotten that key to work, you would be talking to officers right now instead of me. Marcus said my name in that tone he uses when he wants everyone to calm down. As if I were the one who needed to calm down, I turned to him and I said, "Marcus, I love you. But I need you to understand what has happened here. Your wife made a copy of my house key without my permission. You drove 45 minutes to let yourselves into my home without telling me you were coming. This is my house. I bought it. I pay for it. Nobody here has any claim to it. and no one has any right to walk into it. He started to say something about how the kids were getting older and the apartment was tight, and they were just hoping to talk about options, and maybe I had more space than I needed. I stopped him. I said, there is nothing to talk about. This is not a conversation about square footage or kids' bedrooms. This is a conversation about the fact that someone made an unauthorized copy of my key and attempted to enter my home. If you'd like to discuss anything else, you can call me. But right now, I need you to take your family and leave my property. Renee said something under her breath. I didn't ask her to repeat it. Marcus got the kids up from the porch steps. He didn't look at me again. Renee looked at me for a long time with an expression I know well, from years of dealing with difficult patients, the expression of someone who has decided that you are the problem and they are filing that information away for future use. They got in the minivan. I stood in my driveway until they were gone. Then I went inside, sat on my couch in the house I had spent 15 years buying, and I let myself shake for about 5 minutes. When that was done, I made 2 phone calls. The first was to the police non-emergency line. I reported the attempted unauthorized entry, gave them the camera footage, and filed an official report. The officer I spoke with was thorough and kind. He told me that what had occurred could potentially constitute attempted breaking and entering and that having the report on file was the right call. He also suggested I consult with an attorney if I wanted to pursue it further. The second call was to my mother. That conversation was harder. My mother loves Marcus. She loves all of us. But Marcus has always been the one she worries about in the way that mothers sometimes worry more about the child who struggles than the child who manages. I told her what had happened. Not emotionally. Just factually. Because my mother respects facts more than feelings. I told her about the key, the camera footage, the police report. I told her I was not going to accept phone calls from Marcus or Renee for the time being, and I needed her to respect that. There was a long silence. Then my mother said I told Renee about the property records. I said I knew. She said I didn't think and then stopped. I said I know you didn't. That's not what I'm calling about. I'm calling to tell you what happened so that you hear it from me. And so that when Marcus calls you tonight with a different version, you already know. She was quiet again. Then she said, "Are you okay?" And I said yes. Because I was. I genuinely was. Not happy about what had happened. But okay. Solid. Standing in my own kitchen, in my own house. More certain than I had ever been that the 15 years had been worth it. Over the following weeks, the calls came in exactly the order I expected. Marcus first. Then Renee. And then a mutual aunt who I have always liked, but who had clearly been recruited as a messenger. Then Marcus again. The messages ranged from apologetic to hurt to, eventually, a version of events in which I had overreacted and embarrassed everyone over a simple misunderstanding. I did not respond to any of them. What I did do, with the help of an attorney who charged me $250 for an hour of her time, was send a formal cease and desist letter to Marcus and Renee's address, stating clearly that any future unauthorized attempt to access my property would be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. The attorney told me it was a clean case and that the camera footage was excellent documentation. She seemed mildly impressed that I had changed the locks ahead of time. I told her I worked nights. I said you learn to anticipate problems before they happen. My mother and I still have Sunday dinners. Just the 2 of us now. She has not pushed me to reconcile, which I appreciate. She did say once, carefully, that she hoped Marcus and I would find our way back to something. And I told her honestly that I hoped so too. But that the something we found would need to look different from what we had before. Different meaning one where my brother sees me as a person and not a solution to his problems. Different meaning one where Renee understands that my home is mine in every sense of the word. I still get questions sometimes, from people who know bits and pieces of the story, about why I didn't just talk to Marcus before any of this happened. Why I kept the house a secret. Why I didn't give him a chance to be better. Here is my answer. And I have thought about it carefully. I did give him chances. I gave him money and time and patience and the benefit of every doubt for 15 years. What I did not give him, and what I should have protected much sooner, was my boundaries. I confused love with obligation and generosity with surrender. And I let that confusion cost me more than money. The house has been mine for 8 months now. The porch wraps around the front the way I knew it would from the photos. In the evenings, when my shift ends and I drive down my street and see the lights on in my living room, lights I turned on before I left. In my house, on my timer, I feel something that I think is the closest I have gotten to peace. Nobody gave me that. Nobody can take it. And the locks have not been touched since I changed them.